Blue signal protection of workers. Blue signal protection of workers, Part 218, Subpart B, included utility employees, testing. Module 14. Module example for the recall of the definition and necessary to apply with the blue signal regulation, explain the scope of the blue signal regulation, apply with the utility employee with the regulation, find blue signal display with the illustrate with the blue signal protection requirement, work with it under all conditions specified in 218, 25 and 218 through 218, 30, influence complying with the requirements of his or her district. Influence complying with the blue signal regulations of one of the most notable except for the railroad safety prior to the implementation. There was 20 to 25 employee with the facilities annually resolved with the non-compliant with the railroad operating rule 26, which covered the blue signal protection signal elimination quickly reduced the zero. This came to vigorous enforcement by inspectors, including zero tolerance for the non-compliance. This lesson should never tolerate non-compliance. We're going to spend a fair amount of the time with the blue signal regulation because of the critical that the inspector thoroughly understand them and the critical with we achieve with their uniform theory of the industry and non-difference of the opinion with the region with the between the motor power and equipment the operator practice. Discipline will define what disciplines will have obligation to resolve the merits or know the shopping ground for anybody answer, but they know the internal disagreement that we can afford. We can't afford to let them do that. Railroad operating rule in order to ensure the railroad employee with a properly trained with the test for the FRA cross-reference the Part 218 and Part 217 with the means of the railroad must have the railroad operating rule with the blue signal protected from the rule subject to all with the provision of 217 reference 218.11. The blue signal you can correctly apply with the blue signal regulations level 3 of the understanding of the definitions, scope of the meaning of the blue signal display with the particular that will term the key of the definitions. We're going to introduce you to the scope of the term of the blue signal display. Now we'll go back and again after we cover the definition scope. Regulatory purpose, the scope of the defined as the area, but if something acts if the operator with the power of control. Inspector should always be familiar with the scope of the regulations with the enforce. The scope of the blue signal regulation is provided with the protection railroad employee with engaged inspection, testing, repair, servicing with the rolling equipment while under between the equipment subject to them and the danger of personal injury posed by any movement of such equipment. Blue signal display. Blue signal display in accordance with the 218, 25, and 27 or 29 signify that the workers are on under the between the railroad equipment when display with equipment that may not be coupled to equipment that may not be moved with the exemption 218, 29 of the rolling equipment may not be placed with the same track with the scope of the reduce the block of the view. Rolling equipment may not be displayed as a blue signal. Key definition: blue signal clearly distinct with the blue flag with the blue light day with the blue light with the night. We attach for the control of the locomotive with the car shop and repair track area with the means of the one or more track with the area with the testing and repair with the under the exclusive with the control of the mechanical department. Personal control locomotive means locomotive the range having the only control of the all function for one or more locomotives. We have carefully within this limit 1. For the locking device means the van with tampering resistant with the cable being locked and unlocked only with a particular group of the employees being protected. Key definition: locomotive serve the training area with the same meaning of the car shop area. Rolling equipment includes locomotive cars whether or not coupled to the train, which providing access means the switch of width the transverse of the rolling equipment can permit the rolling equipment to couple with equipment being protected. Worker means of the railroad employee assigned with the inspect with the test to repair servicing rolling equipment the component with their several exclusions as you see. A railroad employee who is assigned with the inspect with the test to repair for the railroad rolling equipment if the components include with the brake shift exclude with the member of the train crew working on their own train. Note that the rules does not include with the contractor non-railroad employee with the loading auto rack for the special agent check with the car loading the FRA response for the RSAC working group to deal with the contractor issue, but to the date there's no consensus reached within the industry. Workers exemption, the exemption of the servicing women, the supplying locomotive, the passenger equipment, the serving, the combining, the testing, the carrier exemptions, and you have the layer and then before they properly apply with the rule. See definition 221.16. Utility employees are also special case. You should apply with them separately with the requirements 218, 25, 27, and 29. Worker train crew exemption. Member of the train yard crew is excluded with a blue signal protection sign with a certain worker with equipment is probably with the train yard movement that have been called to operate or have been assigned to use it as to utility employees. The following slide detail with exclusion: work train crew exemption, training engine of the crew exclusion of the apply with the setting of the relief, the handbrakes, coupling, uncoupling air hoses, preparing rail car couplers for the coupling, setting blocks and wheel chains, conducting air brake tests, inspecting, testing, and installing, removing and replacing the rear end of the marker with the end of the train, conducting daily visual inspection locomotive with assist. Worker utility employee exemption FRA list for the 6 function. The utility employee will conduct and perform with the exclusion of the match for the first 6 of the previous slide. The list was intended with exclusion of all jobs with traditional perform with the train T&E crew with the AR petition FRA to expand the list for the FRA declined to do so. Worker train yard crews are not excluded with the blue signal protection when the repair of the rear train over the end of the train device of the charging a battery consider the repair charging a knuckle or drawbar changing a knuckle or knuckle bar drive could use the emergency provisions. Worker holster and helpers are excluded outside of the locomotive for the aim of the house or with the control of the locomotive, adding locomotive to the train with the train yard, they protect the other train with the rules requiring understanding of the movement to be made with between the crews that are working on the same track. Worker holster and helpers may engage the standing refueling activities in locomotives for the tracking area without blue signal display with the controlling locomotives along with the visual contact that is made between the two and employed with the area with the properly protected by blue signal. FRA inspect for the blue signal, regulate for the not applicability. FRA inspect for the both. Inspectors ensure that the equipment will not be subject to the movement scope. Revisited, protect for the railroad employees engaged with inspecting, testing, repairs for the rolling equipment while under between the such for the equipment and subject to the danger of personnel of the pole of the aim of the movement of such equipment. Blue signal display revisited. Blue signal display with the corporate 2, 18, 25, 27, or 29. Signal the workers are under between the railroad rolling equipment when so the two displayed. 1. The equipment may not be coupled to 2. The equipment may not be moved to exceed exemption 2, 18, 29. Other railroad rolling equipment may not be placed in the same track with the reduce the block view. See exemption 2, 18, 29. Rolling equipment may not be passed displayed in a blue signal. Types of the protection main track 2, 18, 25 has its own emergency provision. Other main 2, 18, 27 that includes switches, blue signals, alternate protection, derails, remotely controlled switches, reference 2, 18, 30. Special requirements crossover switches has its own emergency provisions. Type of the protection. Alternate method of the car shop locomotive surfing area 2, 18, 29 trigger requires a detailed understanding of the regulations essentially with the FRA give the railroad ability with the use of the managerial controls of lieu with the absolute protection afforded with the protection requirement of 2, 18, 27 the remotely controlled switches 2, 18, 30. Detailed requirements of remotely locking device recording with the information record keeping requirement. This can get tricky because you'll find method of using the car locomotive facilities as well as on other main tracks. Traditional blue signal 2, 18, 25 to 30. Blue signal inspection complicated with the before we added conditions utility employees were going to focus what we called the traditional blue signal protection. First over the issue does not get clouded with the included protection of the main track of the other main track shop area with remotely controlled protection. What is blue signal display? Clear distinguishable blue flag, blue light by day with a blue light by night. And if not clearly distinguishable to you, but it does not meet the requirements attached for the operating control locomotive. If not lit by the inside of the cab area with sufficient light to become the blue signal clearly distinguished, visible to employees seated at the controls of the locomotive when blue signals are displayed with equipment may not be coupled to the rolling equipment may not be displayed with the blue signal with the equipment may not be moved. Other equipment may be reduced or block may not reduce or block the view of the blue signal. There's no and there's an exception for the 3 and 4 in the car shop or the locomotive service area. Removal of blue signal protection. Protection may be only removed by the same craft of the group that displayed them. This craft of the group must be assigned to work together under common authority and communication with authority. Workers do not require blue signal when protection inspecting alongside of the equipment, bleeding air brakes if on the cars, oiling, journal blocks, interior cleaning on the required bladder, sweeping out locomotive fueling, washing, exterior the equipment, evacuating, recharge of the solid holding tank of the derail in the situation, mechanized track of the maintenance operation, equipment occupied camp cars, or why not? Blue signal industry. The use of the blue signal derail of the industry comes under the hazmat OSHA regulations, not part of the FRA blue signal reduction. However, the railroad employee with the most respect for these signal may not remove them. Main track protection. Blue signal is displayed at each end of the rolling equipment attached to the controlling locomotive. Question whether the risk railroad employees place portable derail on the main track. What should you do if you see this? Protection on the other main track. Blue signal is displayed on near each manually operated switching provided the action for that track. Each switch line with against for the movement, the lock with effect of the locking device, and blue signal attached controlling locomotive. Effective locking device. Maybe the definition of the effect of the locking device must be the vandal resistant, tamper resistant, capable of being unlocked only by the class craft of the group of the employee from which the protection is being provided. Shows effective locking device. Effective locking device. Train crews use the standard switch lock able to perform and do with the required with the blue signal protection over the other main track with the blue signal must fit display with the no fall over the in the track with the other following point with the rolling equipment may enter for the departure or protect track only after all the work activities see with the end the workers have notified the train crew of the blue signal protection have then removed from the switch through the which the equipment will move. Other main track crossover switches. Both switch for each of the cross must be aligned again with the movement of 3 for the crossover, the 2 of the rolling equipment. The switch for each of the crossover the provide with the except for the rolling equipment to have the blue signal displayed by at least blue line against the movement of the lock with an effect of the locking device for the manual switches. These seem simple enough but can be tricky when they evaluate with the crossover switches. Be careful. Other main track alternate protection derail fulfillment requirement of the manual switch for the position not less than 150 feet with the end of the equipment. The derail must be locked in the derailing position. Blue signal must be displayed each derail. Other main track with a remotely controlled switch. A person in charge of the worker to notify the operator line again for the movement effect apply with the effective locking device. Operator advises if the protection has been provided, the effective locking device may be deployed or key ring tag will be does not prevent a lever or button from being manipulated. Would not comply with the operator. Maintain with a 15-day with a written record of each notification. Emergency provision. Emergency main track of emergency repair work is done under and between the locomotive one or more coupled with the locomotive with the blue signal not available. The engineer must be notified of the effect of the manager must be taken to protect the workers making the repairs. Note, we are strict on this. Many cases we would say that the blue signals are available, they must be used. Emergency provisions of the main track with the emergency repair work is done when the under the in between the locomotive with the one or more car the coupled to the locomotive with the blue signal is not available. The engineer must be notified of the effect of the measure that must be taken to protect the workers making the repairs. Something which restricted in many cases would say that the blue signal is available, they must be used. Locomotive, car, and shop with the blue signal regulations originally implemented in 1976 with the quote asserting that there was problems associated with the shop area with virtually impossible for the car locomotive shop to comply with the perform this mission. FRA issued the new rule soon afterward, but essentially gave it the absolute protection with the combination of the good protection managerial control within these areas. Within this in mind, let's review the requirement for the shop's locomotive servicing track area with the more and more tracks area, the which for the testing, so for the repair, inspection, rebuilding of the locomotives done with the exclusive control of the mechanical departure. And personnel, but this can be tricky sometimes, particularly when the railroad employs inside and outside holster, locomotive tracking, surface tracking area, blue signal area, and near each switching to provide with an inch for the departure from the area switch line away for the lock, blue signal attached with the controlling locomotive to those being worked on. Locomotive service is within tracking of the speed with which 5 miles an hour less lock derail with the blue signal may not be within 7 switch at least 50 feet from the equipment. Locomotive may be moved with the on to the area after only the blue signal has been removed. The entrance switch must shop short of the coupling. Locomotive service the locomotive may reposition after the removal of the blue signal to worker on the effect of the track will have been notified that if operated authorized employee within under the direction of the person with the charge of the workers. What about the inside and outside holsters controlling locomotive? The locomotive arranged with having only the control of the over electrical, mechanical, pneumatical functions, one or more locomotives, including control transmitted by radio signal. If so, the equipment does not include the 2 or more locomotives, coupled to multiple, which can be moved from the more than one side of the locomotive controls. Non-controlling locomotive, the independent brake valve with a multiple unit control valve that is in the trailing position, automatic brake valve that is in the handle-off position, the valve cut out. Car shop, repair track area of the one or more tracks within the area, which for the testing, for the repair inspection of the rebuild of the rolling equipment, if it's under the exclusive for the control of the mechanical department personnel. Car shop repair track area with the blue signal near each switch for the providing engine for the departure from the area switch to line away and locked. Car shop repair track if the speed is 5 miles an hour left of the locked rail with the blue signal may be used instead of the switch position at least 50 feet from the equipment. Car mover that may be repositioned rolling equipment after the workers affected with the track have been notified about the work on the track must see until the movements have been completed. Derails you can lose a switch. Remotely controlled switching derails in shop area with no requirement of the record with personal controlling switching derails is on the same craft with effective locking device established. Remote control panel in the shop. Type of the protection and the utility employed with the train, so for the type of the duties and the employee with the time of the more crew during the duty tour with the difficult nature of the compliance because of some of the critical criteria areas, absolutely hours for the random drug tests and pooling, utility employee, railroad employee assigned to and functioning with a temporary member of the train or yard crew is permanently functioning to assist the train. The yard crew assembly with a disassembly classification rail cars operation of the train and subject to the condition 21822. A utility employee subject to the hours or for the law of the hours or for the record keeping part 228 program in section 217.11 and efficiency 2 testing 217.9 alcohol drug testing part 219. Utility employee training yard crew one or more railroad employees assigned with controlling locomotive under charge of the control of the one crew member. called to perform covered service C&E, involved with the training yard movement, then are to work with the operating crew and report working together as a unit. Other utility employment shall perform and serve as a member only one training yard crew at any given time. Service with more than one crew may be subsequently but not concurrent. Utility employees conditions training yard crew must be assigned with controlling locomotive that is under the actual control assigned locomotive engineering with the crew. Utility employees condition locomotive engineer shall be in the cab controlling locomotive while the locomotive stationary and be replaced with the cab by another member of the crew, same crew. Locomotive does not have to be coupled to the equipment, but has to be in vicinity. Utility employees condition. The utility employee must establish communication with the crew for the containing of the designated crew member for the arriving at the on the arriving train before the commencing any of the duties for the crew. Railroad operating rules must define the specific designated crew member as part of the point of contact. Utility employees conditions before commencing with the DCM provide with the notice of the identified UE. Once if the utility employee, once the crew members employed in knowledge of the for the DCM, the vibe of the utility employee, he or she is authorized to work as part of the crew. Communication must be maintained that each of the member understand the duties. Alright, utility employee performing one or more of the following functions. 1. Set with the release of the handbrakes, coupling, uncoupling air hose out of the connection per aircraft with the coupling. For set with the wheel blocks or wheel chain with the air brake test, include with the cutting of the air brake with the components in and out with the position retaining valve with the inspect the test and shovel the remove the place rear end with the marking device or end of the train device. Utility employee with the 6th function that are limited to the training yard crew. The usually blue signal protection is provided with the 7th function. Crew members inspect with the assignment of the locomotive. With the 66th, the utility employee has ceased all work with the connection with the train. Utility employee notifies DCM. The DCM provided the notice of each of the crew member. The utility employee being released. Each crew member acknowledged with the notice of the DCM. Notify the utility employee he is released from train or yard crew. Communication between UM and the DC, all utility employee and the DCM, the direct verbal contact radio, part 220, oral telecommunication, equivalent integrity. Utility employee no more than 3 utilities employed may be detached one train yard crew to given the time railroad employee with now assigned with the train yard crew is authorized to work with the crew under 5 conditions working requiring blue signal protection. Learning objective. Let's review the learning objective stated at the beginning with this module. Recall the definition and everything applied with the blue signal regulation. Explain the scope of the blue signal regulation 21821. Apply utility employee regulation 21822. The defined blue signal display 21823. Illustrate with the blue signal protection requirement workers under all conditions at 21825 through 30. Influence compliance with the requirements for his or her district. And that's the end of module 14.